Hello, hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at this wonderful event with our latest writer in residence, Toria Garbutt, on the Writer's Block tonight. You are in the correct Zoom place. We are at the In Conversation event, which is the first big event of Toria's residency. It's really lovely to see you all. I can see some familiar names in the on my screen there, some familiar faces, so it's lovely to have you all back. And I can also see some new names as well that I haven't seen before. So welcome to anybody who's new to WOW tonight as well. It's great to have you with us. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, my name is Becky and I'll be hosting this event tonight with Toria. We've also got our moderator, Lauren, who currently has a camera off but will be there to answer any questions. So if you need anything at all through the night, you can pop a message in the chat and Lauren will be able to help you. And we've got our tech who's running the event tonight, who is Zach, that's our WOW team tonight. Brilliant. So thank you again, everybody, for being here tonight. We are, this is the In Conversation event following, we had a daily prompt this morning as well. So to anybody who watched the live stream this morning and joined in with the daily prompt, thank you for coming to that. It was really lovely and engaging. So just a little bit of boring tech stuff now. If you want to watch this event in speaker view, that's probably going to be your best viewing experience. If you just make sure that you keep yourself muted unless you're asked to unmute, and we will be having a little Q&A session at the end. So if you've got any burning questions for Toria, you can either pop a question in the chat, or if you're feeling brave, you can use the raise hand function, which is at the bottom of your screen, and you can raise your hand and ask a question, and we'll pull you up onto the screen to ask Toria a question verbally. There's also captions that you can enable if you're hard of hearing, so that you can follow along with this event. I think that the instructions of that are just on the bottom as well. If you look along the bottom, there's a little button that says CC and you can click the captions there. Great. And just as a last note, obviously it goes without saying that at WOW we have a zero tolerance policy for any hate speech, racism, sexism, fascism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, or any other horrible isms and obias that you can think of. This room is a safe space, and we ask that we all treat each other with respect at all times, or you'll be removed from the Zoom with no questions asked. So just to get onto the fun stuff now, a little bit of an introduction to Toria. So I had the absolute privilege of meeting Toria for the first time just over a year ago when I attended a workshop led by her at Damien Kelly House. And I'm so thrilled that she's been able to join us as our writer in residence this month. I think what struck me initially about Toria's style of teaching was that I didn't feel like I was in a class, because the atmosphere that she creates is so emboldening and she makes everyone feel like a real poet. And so I'm so excited that she's come on board with WOW and will be instilling that same sense of confidence in everyone joining us at these workshops. So Toria Garbutt, for those of you who don't know her, and if you don't, then you really should by now, is a proper, wholeheartedly real, absolute renegade of a poet. Her writing is unapologetically punk, Doc Marten clad, raw, gorgeous, conversational, and fully from the heart. She's an incredibly accomplished writer and spoken word performer, having performed as a regular tour support for Dr. John Cooper Clarke, most recently on his Luckiest Guy Live tour. And Toria's words have also been featured in shows at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and recently in The Guardian for their feature on the rise and rise of the new poets. In 2018, her first poetry collection, The Universe in Me, was published by Wrecking Ball Press. There's lines within Toria's poetry, particularly within her album Hot Plastic Moon, that she released via spoken word label Nymphs and Thugs in 2016, that will wedge themselves permanently in your brain. And I would encourage those of you who are just discovering Toria's work to get your teeth into her writing and take advantage of her workshops as much as possible over this residency. So we're so happy to welcome her as our September writer on the block, Toria Garbutt.
Oh, thanks very much, Becky. What a lovely intro. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to start by performing a few poems for you. So I tend to write about my real life experiences, where I'm from. So the first poem I'm going to perform for you is called No Matters Now, and it's about growing up in Nottingley, which is a little ex-mining town in West Yorkshire with a big drugs problem. In Notley, we smoke smack for pain, to hide the guilt and blame and shame of unemployment. We play guitars and gaze at stars to feel warm and safe and happy. We're just grungers and flower children, these 90s mop-head lovers and swaggers who pile into transit vans and blag it into Glastonbury. Our art is beautiful. It's Hendrix and Pixies and 60s psychedelia, and Cecilia is breaking our hearts, man. She's breaking our fucking hearts. Oasis hats, tinnies and flares, Britpop blasts and blares through Warwick Estate on Carnival Day. We win goldfish and then we eat them for dares. Act a twat in front of Mary Ponte. I kid this and I kid that. Our nasal tones right suited, man. Me mate Roachy, fucking mad for it, man. He showed me this trick with his fist in pissing down rain in park. We held these invisible umbrellas over his heads and stayed out till dark, dry as me nana's scones, mate. You were this ballerina boy in a hat. On a mission to Brov Woods with a guitar on your back, with weed and beer and stories and smack. An all-timing world to do mad stuff like that. Thought we'd be here forever, weightless and old, burning rocks instead of coal, burning for his father's and his grandfather's souls. But muckers don't stay muckers when sun's gone down. When honeymoon is over and you're rattling Fort Brown and you'd rob your mother's wedding ring and flog it uptown. Because nothing is sacred when sun's gone down, when you're gagging for a bag and your nose is on drip and you take your mum's last tenner for a quick and easy fix. Because no matters now, mucker, no matters now. That night, you walked home from your dad's. You didn't make it past railway tracks. Were you acting stupid? Did you lay down to look at stars and fall asleep? Or did you weep and wait for death to take you? Mate. Oh, mate. I wish that I'd been with you, because I'd have held my fist above you and kept you dry. Thank you very much. I'm going to just have a quick swig of tea and imagining that you're doing a big clap for me. Thank you. So this next poem, it's about oh, thanks, Angela. I had I'm just going to try and hide the mess in the background. I had postnatal depression after my first son were born, and I carried a lot of guilt and shame about that for a long time. And then on his 12th birthday, I had this realization, and this poem's about that. It's called Good Mam. Eden, today you are 12. Two giant silver balloons, a 1 and a 2, suspended like moons. This daft animal song plays by accident on YouTube instead of Happy Birthday, and I just laugh. For once, I'm not crushed by imperfection. In fact, I prefer it. Your brother says, "'Cause it's your birthday, you can punch me on arm." And you do. And that birthday buzz is snuffed like a candle. He cries, and you're too hard on yourself. You've learnt that from me. But this time, I don't react. Today, I am older too. Instead, I respond from a place of love. Hold space for peace and calm, and like all pain, it passes with forgiveness and acceptance and strong arms. We go out for breakfast, tell tales over toast. This waitress tells me about her son. We talk about all our sons, those sons we mother on behalf of others. She says, "I can tell you're a good man." And for the first time, I let it land. I am. Thank you very much. I'm wondering whether to read one from my book that I don't often read. Yeah, go on. I'll read one from my book, and then I'll do you one about prison. So this one's called I Wore Hope, and it were inspired by Louise Fazakali. She gave me a writing prompt, and this is what came from it. I wore hope. I made my dress from all my lovers. A hot patchwork frock stitching brother to brother, and big belt hands wrapped tight around my waist, and warm mouths whispered in my ears soft as lace. And I wore lust all day. And I wore lust all day. I made my dress from leaves and flowers, walked barefoot through concrete towers, threw down my hood, embraced the rain, and I wore hope all day. And I wore hope all day. I made my dress from all my sisters, stitched so long that I got blisters, pulled silver threads from moon to womb, and I wore strength all day. And I wore strength all day. Okay. Thanks, Ian McAvanna. I can see your hands clapping. So, Becky, shall I do one or two? I don't know how we're doing for time. Two? Should I do one more or two more? Okay. All right, so I'll do this one. This is called The Universe and Me, and I named my book after it. And it's about a time in my life when, this poem's about a time in my life when we moved out of Nottingley into a little village in like the semi-rural outskirts. And it's about that. That in-between space after school before tea. Just sunshine and telly and settee and me. Tired and happy and hollow and free. Just sunshine and telly and settee and me. A waft of snags and mash and that comes curling across room. And my mum's making up hot words to a 90s Britpop tune. She's like, girls who are, boys who are, boys who are. You and me, baby. Oh, bless her little socks off the soft and pink and cotton. She'll probably had a bobbly cardi on, but don't ask because I've forgotten. She's cute and small and mumsy colour twirling ballerina. She's Andy Pandy, Bill and Ben in our living room arena. My mum, she's chopping spam. She's feeding our chihuahua. She's teaching me the elegance of matriarchal power. She's spinning plates on roller skates and serving me a smile. Sat her ass on toilet, so she'll probably be a while. It smells of snags and peas and mash and tastes like Bisto gravy. It sounds like blurred, it feels like third, it's the air back tongue, baby. It looks like suns and moons and stars and giant yellow teacups. It feels like docks and knee-high socks and Marks and Spencer's teacups. That in-between space after tea before bed, when you're meant to do your own work, but you're watching Friends instead. Listening to Jim Morrison and floating out your head in a higher dimension than not low. Puffing on a bifter on a pink blow-up settee in the in-between space before bed and after tea. praying for forgiveness and praying to be free. Just the sunset and the moonlight and the universe and me. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to do this one. I'll finish on this one. And I've done a little bit of work in prisons teaching poetry workshops, and I wrote this poem after the first time I ever worked in a prison in Hull HMP, and it's called Good Enough. We sit in a circle, me and these lads, these tattooed, lassoed scallywags, and I know them quick as a click. Because these are the lads of my youth. If I close my eyes, I'm back in school, back of the class, gobbing off, playing it cool. Or I'm on the grandstand in the park, drinking Mad Dog 2020 before it even gets dark. These are the lost brothers of my tribe. Those ones who fucked up and fucked off and ended up banged up inside. We sit and talk. They suss me out and I tell them everything. Stretch my heart and mind wide open and tell them you can do this because I'm imperfect too. And here's the best bit in this class: the worse your stories, the better you'll do. They pass around my book and say rate nice stuff and make me feel accepted. And within 5 minutes, we establish we are equally respected. They talk about their birds in words never heard about me. Hope to fucking God she'll still be there when I walk free, and they're talking these mad contradictions. This one lad doesn't seem to make that connection, would give you his last 20p. Oh, this most generous thief. And he sits and he's fired up to fuck and he tells me he can't feel emotions and I want to make him see. So I nod my head and agree and then try to implant these new thoughts subliminally and tell him, oh mate, you can do whatever you want if you believe. And then he tells me why he likes to clean. He tells me why he likes to clean, that as a teen that he did it for his mum and that he made the tea so that she wouldn't get a hiding when a fella got in. And then he runs past me this long, loud, fast list of this and then this and then this and then this and then this, expecting that at the end that I must be truly convinced that this lad here cannot feel. Tell him that I understand and that all of those things have been kept out to survive. But I tell him if he starts to write, that slowly and safely it can all come out, and that if he'll let himself open just a tiny little bit, might start to feel love once he's cleared out some shit. And he sits and frowns and he protests again. And I beam back wide-eyed hope. And he picks up his pen. And that lad opposite is sensible and kind. He lost his baby, then he lost his mind, till hate burst from his fist and all over her face. And then 2 years later, he's got a qualification in counselling and he's grateful for this place. Some of them are relieved to have had time to let wounds heal and form scars. And then the lad to my right, he's the one. He's the one that I'll cry about when I'm in bed tonight, because some of them get into your heart. And you're not entirely sure why. He's a man with the wide-eyed, dadless sadness of a young boy. And I tell him, well done, well done. Until it is embedded so deep that he hears, well done, lad, in his fucking sleep. And I tell him, mate, please, please, please replace those harsh inner words with new ones. Speak to yourself like a child, like I've done after years of bad lad, slag, shit, mum. These can be our new ones. We are good enough. We are good enough. We are good enough. We are good enough. We're all good enough. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Thank you. Becky, I'll just wait to be whizzed back into a chat with you. Thank you, Angela. Becky, I'm done with my set now. Am I waiting for you? We'll get a packet of crisps or something. Chat amongst yourselves. So Andrea, so the prompts from this morning is on YouTube. So you can go watch that back. I think if you just put into YouTube, writing on the wall, right here, right now, it's on there, so you can watch that back. Oh, hang on, let's have a look at some chat. Becky, give me a thumbs up. Are you having tech issues?
Got it now. Toria.
It's all right.
Goes sometimes, doesn't it? I think clearly I just my computer knew I needed a moment after that last poem, so
yeah, it was just taking some time to process.
Yeah, thank you so much for those incredibly powerful readings. I think particularly that last one just always gets me. Like every time I hear it, it's just, I don't know, I think it just really appeals to that like inner child, you know, in so many ways. Like, and that image of that like all these like lads, these like big lads, these grown men just needing to be told, you know, well done. And yeah, really powerful, really yeah, brilliant stuff. Thank you, Toria. So I've just got oh no, honestly, it's I mean, we've spoken about this before and stuff, and I mean, I said this at the beginning of the event, like I just think you're an absolute renegade, so it's great. So just before I can see we've got some questions and stuff in the chat. Thank you for being keen beans, that's brilliant. We will get to you at the end. We'll have a little Q&A. I just wanted to sort of I wondered if you wouldn't mind, Toria, just speaking a bit about your journey with poetry, because I think your story is really great about how you got into it and like how you've become this like performer, but everything's so personal and that you write about as well. And I wondered if you could speak a bit on your journey and your sort of relationship to writing.
Yeah, so I started writing just privately when I was a little kid, you know, a teenager. My sister wrote lyrics and poetry. She were really cool. I massively looked up to her. So we lived in a real like rough little town, but the fact that my sister wrote poetry meant that it must be a cool thing to do. So then I got into writing it, not really knowing that there were any rules to it. And I think that's the freest way that we make art, in it, before we start to feel that we don't understand the rules of it or whatever. So it's just something that I always liked to do privately. And then it wasn't until years later. It sounds insane, really, but I've been in a situation for a lot of years where I were unhappy and stifled, and in a relationship that didn't kind of like allow me the freedom to pursue my own personal dreams and interests. And when I decided that needed to come to an end, I decided to just have a go at it, Becky. Like, I'd not worked for such a long time. I'd not really done a lot of anything apart from bring up kids. But I kind of just had this little burning desire inside me to write and to perform. And so I just had this wild idea that I would send a package of poetry to Mike Gary and like stuff it with angel hair and wham bars and stuff like that. And I sent it off to him. Me and Mike Gary ended up being friends, chatting over emails. I started going to shows, and then I thought, well, fuck it, I might as well dream big and imagine myself getting on tour with John Cooper Clarke. And yeah, it just all fell into place, Becky. And like, I'm just trying to think how long it's been now. It's probably been like maybe 4 or 5 years or something that I've been doing it professionally and touring. So it kind of like came out of nowhere. It went from just being this dream to the feeling of really like having nothing to lose. Like I think I was so unhappy, and it was kind of like all or nothing. Like there wasn't really anything to lose. I didn't have anything, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah,
completely. I just love the image of you like sitting down like with these poems and just stuffing a wham bar in the envelope. It's just brilliant.
I just believed it with all my heart. I just thought, well, like, this has got to work. This has got to work. And then, like, maybe a couple of months after that, Mike invited me to come out for a meal with him and Johnny, and like it was just so surreal to me. I was just so completely starstruck, you know, to be sat at this table with these two incredible poets and to be accepted, and for them to tell me that they liked my work. Wow, like, we all need a bit of that, don't we? I think.
Oh, definitely. I mean, confidence, yeah. Like, I mean, I think we were talking about this a bit earlier as well, about that feeling of imposter syndrome, and, you know, where does that come from, and like, how do we combat that? And like, I think it's definitely, I mean, I get it all the time. Everybody gets it all the time. I had to come onto this Zoom at the very beginning when I was talking, and I was like, "Oh, it's me, Toria," and it's lovely. Like, and it's nice to hear. Well, it's not lovely, obviously, that, you know, you have imposter syndrome, but it's nice to kind of feel like you can relate to somebody whose work you admire and stuff, and they still have those, you know, those qualms and those worries and stuff as well.
Yeah, I think most people do, you know, and I think that's why it's so important to kind of like surround ourselves with good people who can fan our flames, and you know what I mean. I've got, you know, some really amazing friends in my life. A really good friend of mine, Emma, she's like my right hand gal, and like, you know, she's there every day pushing me and going, giving me encouragement, giving me support. You know, my partner PJ, like, we need these people in our life, Becky, don't we, to just remind us, because I think it's so easy for us to get down on ourselves, you know. So yeah, man, we need cheerleaders, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Just on that, Toria, I know, like, a lot of your work is kind of about that identity and sort of rising up, like, with pride in that identity, and, you know, sort of being your own cheerleader, I suppose, in a way. And it's got this just amazing, like, unapologetic bolshiness to it. And I just wondered if, like, in terms of writing from a place of, like, your own identity and poetry and stuff, is that something that you kind of always foresaw when you started your journey with writing and stuff, that it was going to come from such a personal place and your stories and things?
I think that kind of like unapologetic thing has come from, first of all, like, going to a high school in a deprived area where I felt very much like an outsider, and every day would have to kind of channel this sort of like, I don't give a fuck, this is me sort of attitude, which were completely put on, by the way. Like, I'm such a massive, like, softie, but developed this kind of false, copied off my sister really, like, developed a false kind of confidence of like, I belong here, head up high, no one's going to mess with me, you know. And I think that probably like started from high school. And then I think by the time I was ready to get out there in the world and start performing, I'd been held back for so long. I'd been in an abusive relationship for 11 years. And I felt, you know, that I'd had to dilute the things I had to say because they would trigger such a sometimes violent reaction in my partner. I'd had to keep things in, you know, like edit information, scared to just be, and by the way, we're just living just the most basic innocent life you could imagine, but with such an intense fear that I'd done something wrong, you know. Like, so by the time me starting poetry totally coincided with leaving that relationship, it was a case of like, right, I'm done now, like, this is, it was kind of like being born again, really, like surrendering and just starting again. And so I think there were definitely like a sense of urgency that came with my writing. It was a case of like, I've said fucking nothing for 11 years, and actually I've got loads to say, and it kind of started pouring out of me with a real urgency. I guess I felt like I was making up for lost time, you know. Suddenly I was in my 30s and felt like, what have I actually achieved apart from having children? And so yeah, I think I had such a lot of things that I wanted to say all at once. And I think probably like in my new writing that I'm working on now, I think there's perhaps less of a sense of that urgency, because I think there's less of a sense of urgency
Mm.
in me.
Yeah.
I think it probably like reflected my energy at the time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, it is such an important job, and like I think it's just that thing of being a mum in it and feeling like, and I by the way, I love that job more than anything, you know. But it's that thing of being a woman and feeling, okay, this is my job and I love it, but also like, who am I? Where did I go? Where's that independent person out there in the world? What are my interests and what are my needs? You know, and just starting to like be able to think about that again, and with this sense of I've kind of, not because of the children but because of the nature of the relationship, I had that part of myself suppressed for such a long time that it were almost like my inner wild woman were just like banging a drum inside me, kicking the doors open, you know. Yeah,
completely. It's like these just I think it, like, we know Maya Angelou when she was younger. I don't know if you've read her one of her biographies, Why the Caged Bird Sings, and she was, when she was younger, she was mute for like years, and she'd been abused when she was younger, and she writes in this book, I wanted to make sure I read every single book in the library, and like took me time, and then when I felt like I had the words, when I felt like I could speak, it all just came tumbling out, and you know, she became this writer. And yeah, just you saying that then just sort of reminded me of that. And yeah, it's so empowering though, it is a sense of freedom, isn't it? Like, it is really, especially with, I mean, I was just thinking about some of those writing prompts and stuff when we're doing the free writing and things like that, and you actually have to kind of unlock a bit of your brain to just let it spill. And I think it is like therapy, isn't it? Really, it is. It's really extraordinary what comes out, and you don't always know that it's in there.
Right, we don't often ask ourselves those questions, do we? And I think for me, like, my poetry journey began by asking myself those questions, you know.
Yeah, completely.
And it does unlock something. And the other thing as well, Becky, I think sometimes, like, the further back you're held, the faster you propelled forward. So feeling like, oh no, it's too, you know, I've not done this, I'm getting older. I think sometimes like we got to use all that to our advantage, and kind of like let that push us forward, you know, with urgency.
Yeah, completely. I just have one last question, I think, and then we'll go to questions in the chat, because I can see there's a few coming in there, Toria, as well, which is lovely. So I'm just wondering, you mentioned before about you've got an upcoming book. Are you able to talk a bit more about it? Are you happy to? That'd be lovely.
Yeah. So I only want to release things when I feel like I've got something to say, you know. So it's been a good few years since my last book, because when I really, like, my first collection is sort of like 10 years or more worth of like ideas and thoughts, and so my worst fear is putting out a second book that's just not quite good enough, you know, like, or not quite, you know, I don't want to put it out for the sake of it. So so I'm writing away, and I've considered releasing it a couple of times, and then thought, no, it's not quite ready yet. However, I've just, you know, in my personal life, Becky, you know, I've just lost my sister, and writing recently has been such an incredible therapeutic thing for me. And I think really that's for me, that's what poetry's always been for me. It's kind of been like a bit of a saviour for me. And so recently I found myself writing more than ever, and so, you know, without realizing that would be the case, I think my second book was probably going to take on quite a lot of that shape, reflections about me and my sister and our childhood and our relationship. But yeah, I'm not in any kind of urgency to release that. I think it'll just be ready when it's ready. I've been saying that for a couple of years now, so. But I think it'll come out when, you know, when it's the right time for it to come out.
Yeah, just letting it brew.
Yeah, just letting it brew and just living a bit as well, actually, because things keep happening. My little lads are growing up, and my oldest is going to college, and he's got a girlfriend, and he's just, he went on his first date recently. So big things are happening that I'm wanting to write about and capture, and I would love all those things to go into that second collection. So kind of just want to hang back and just observe and write for a little bit, really, and see what happens over this year.
Yeah, definitely. What do you boys think about being in your stories and your book and your poetry and that?
I think they're a bit sort of like, I don't know, I think they're a bit embarrassed about it, really. They like bits of it, like they've been away on tour with me before, with John Cooper Clarke, and they like all that, and they like being backstage, and like Ember loves being in the green room, do you know what I mean, helping himself to food and like the hotel rooms and all that. He loves all that bit, helping me sell books. But the actual sort of thing of like, being mentioned in my poetry, or even watching me perform, actually, I think they find it a bit embarrassing. I remember taking them both, because they've always pretty much always been homeschooled, my lads, so they've kind of just, if I've gone to work, they've sometimes had to come with me. And like one of the first gigs that I did, Ember just sat and booed like all the way through. So yeah, I think they're sort of proud of me in a way, but I'm the mum, and it's like I'm hideously embarrassing.
I think even probably Angelina Jolie's children are.
I hope so, Becca. I hope so. That's a comfort.
That's the nature of the beast, though, isn't it? But
yeah,
I think it's really cool that they've been able. Who else can say that they've grown up going on tour with the mum? Do you know what I mean? It's brilliant.
It's been good. It's been difficult at times. Like I'd have to get really sort of creative with like keeping them entertained and stuff backstage. So there'd be times where I'd be like wheeling them around a car park in a shopping trolley and stuff, just to keep them out of the way while other people try and have a bit of quiet and stuff backstage. So like, yeah, not always easy, but definitely an adventure.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, thank you for that, Toria. So I've got a couple of questions in the chat here, and as I said before, for any of our audience watching, if you would like to ask a question, if you'd like me to ask it for you, you can pop it in the chat. We'll try and get round all of them. And if you would like to ask one on screen, please use the raise hand function and turn your camera on, and feel free to come up and ask us on screen as well. So I've got a question from Nancy. I think you started touching on this before, didn't you, Tori? About so Nancy says, what do your sons think of your poems, especially the one about your eldest son? So it's a two-pronged question. And then the second question from Nancy is, can you tell us more about the prison workshops? How did you end up doing that? What kind of people was it? And did you feel afraid at all with them? So yeah, two different questions there.
Yeah, so the first bit, so there's a poem in my first collection called Forgive, and it's all about postnatal depression, and it's, I'm like very honest about some of the dark thoughts that I had. And me and Eden, we were over in Boston in America. We were at an unschooling conference, and I were asked to perform, and I had a chat with him about this poem beforehand and said, like, are you comfortable with me performing it? And we had a really honest and open discussion about postnatal depression, about mental health, and he was so kind, and he just said to me, Mum, like, don't worry about it. And then he said, and I'll never forgive this, he went, you're a lovely woman. It was just like the cutest thing I've ever heard. So I think because I've got such a close relationship with them, we know each other, and we love and trust each other, and so we can have boundaries, and we can be comfortable. We make sure that we're comfortable, and we don't try not to do things that make each other feel uncomfortable. So that's always like a discussion first, as to what can go in a book or what can be performed in front of them and things like that. And the second one, work in prisons, it's something that I've just always wanted to do. I just had like a deep down feeling it might be something that I would be good at. And a friend of mine were working in Humber at Russellton, a friend of mine working in Humber, HMP at the time, and he invited me in to come and do it just for free, just to go and get a sense of it. And I was absolutely terrified, like completely terrified, and it was nothing like what I imagined. you know, the inmates were really pleased to be there and really keen to learn and very respectful towards me. I've only ever had positive experiences in that role in prison. So so after I got the experience of it, me and another friend of mine, he got some funding from the Arts Council, and we did a project, and yeah, it's just kind of like grown from there.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's what's really cool about a lot of the stuff that you do as well, Toria, is that you're very like in these communities and stuff. And I think a lot of time people think of writing and you think, oh, it's just, you know, sat at a desk like typing away or penciling away or whatever. And actually, like what you were saying before about you know, taking stock and experience in life and things like that is so much a part of it as well. And like working with people can often be part of it as well. Is that kind of like where a lot of your, I know you write from a lot of personal experiences, but in terms of your inspiration and stuff, is that like where a lot of that and that motivation and that comes from?
Yeah, from my own real life experiences. Yeah, a friend of mine, Ian Clayton, I once went round to his house for a cuppa and a chat, and he said, Toria, all the best stories exist already within your head, you know, and you just have to find a way to tell them. And that was just one of those really great pieces of advice where I just thought, oh, he's so right. Like, my partner PJ is amazing at making things up. He's got such a wicked imagination. Like, I'm not really, you know. I think my thing is describing things that have already happened to me or things that I've already experienced. So and I think like when I go into prisons as well, what I find is that like those lads have got so many stories to tell. They just didn't realize that they were kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, but able to tell them, you know, like they didn't realize that poetry was something that they would be able to use as a vehicle for telling those stories. I think, you know, often like our experience at school can put us off writing poetry because we think, you know, we don't understand the rules or it's not for us, or that's often the case. And kind of like once you sort of like break down those barriers, you find that, you know, people have got stuff to say that they can feel really proud about as well. And like we said earlier, sometimes it's just as simple as somebody who you respect saying to you, like, that's really good, you know, well done. Wow, you know, the power of words like that, Becky. It's you know, you've been talking to yourself in your head for a long time, really unkindly. You know, it's a powerful thing to start replacing those words, isn't it, and giving yourself and each other some positivity.
Yeah, completely. I think that's all it takes sometimes as well, isn't it? Like, and a lot of people, unfortunately, with writing, especially because it's like associated with like, you know, oh, is my spelling good enough, and is, you know, do I understand punctuation, and you know, what's this like pentameter or whatever. Like you become distanced from actually what it's about, which is the sort of creativity of it, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's that's brilliant. I've just got another question, again, sort of on that similar topic. So do these prison workshops turn into more of a creative therapy session? It's a very interesting question from Nancy there.
Yeah, I think they often do turn into a creative therapy session. And, you know, I don't have any qualifications in counselling or therapy, but I just think because of the nature of poetry and its ability to kind of like tap in to that personal space inside you. And also I think it has the power to create a very kind of like intimate and connected environment as well. So at the start of the workshops, like often at the start of the week, you know, the lads might be a bit kind of like showy offy or loud, or like, you know, sometimes some of the content of the raps and rhymes a little bit iffy. And then like by the end of the week, you've got this group of lads in a circle that are like coming out with these really beautiful descriptions. This one lad was talking about like stroking his nana's eyebrows that were like the soft caterpillar of my grandma's eyebrows, or something beautiful like that. And that's what poetry has the power to do, you know, like it's just, I just think it's such a personal art form, and that, you know, other than writing in a diary, we don't tend to express ourselves in that way. But once you provide the space for it and you give permission to do that, you know, and you build that trust within a group that no one's going to take the piss out of you for it. And actually, if you're willing to be vulnerable in that way, the opposite to what you imagine is going to happen. And actually what does happen is that people really respect you for it, you know, like it's ballsy to say things like that in front of a group of men, you know, like, and the other lads feel it too. And I just think it's such a brilliant thing, Becky. I think you touched earlier about, you said something about lads in prison, and about how they, you know, end up being in touch with their emotions. And I think that we emotionally neglect lads sometimes. I think, like, you know, we have a kind of expectation of lads that they don't want to be hugged and they don't want to be,
it's like,
you know,
like, oh my god, completely. I mean, like my experience of growing up compared to like my cousins, like, and he's like, I mean, he's like the scalliest lad that you could imagine, and like he was never kind of, you know, he'd be like, oh, man up, or, you know, you can't cry, and he kind of has this like, and as he's gotten older he's sort of dropped it a little bit more, but you've definitely built up with this kind of like facade almost, like, you know, you've got to be tough, or you've got to be this, or yeah, like Nancy's just put in the chat, like real men don't cry kind of attitude. And if you're not taught to be soft, or, you know, to understand yourself, how on earth are you going to understand anybody else? And so you really sort of put on the back foot in a way. It's silly, isn't it? Like, why is one type of person allowed to cry and the other person isn't? Why is, you know, why is it that you have to have such condensed feelings if you're a boy, or you can't express it? It's really damaging. It's
damaging, Becky. And like often, you know, the crimes that have been committed, you know, with these particular lads that I work with, you can see how they've really just been like an extension of that, an extension of those rules, you know, a manifestation of all those rules, ultimately, you know. And I think at the very, like inside all of us, in the very base of us all, is just a need for connection. And as crazy as it sounds, like these gangs and the crimes that they commit, like the very base of that all is, in a crazy way, like a need to belong and connect often, you know. So I think poetry has the power to explore all those kind of things in a way that perhaps other art forms don't. And I think that's the real power of it.
I think there's definitely something to be said for the way that, especially with your poetry and stuff, Toria, like, it's so, I mean this in a complimentary way, so I hope it comes out like that, but it's got so much like mess and like feeling, and, you know, it's got like, it is a spill when you read a lot of it. It's a spill. And I think, like, you know, even in terms of like seeing something like that, or something that you can engage with, or something that uses like your dialect, do you know what I mean, on a page, compared to, like, I don't know, sometimes reading like Shakespeare in school, and it's, you know, somebody who wrote it however many 100 years ago, and it's in what feels like a different language, and, you know, it's graded and all that, and it feels exclusive, I think, a lot of the time. And so I can completely, I mean, it's, if you don't feel like you can fit in, then you're going to look for other ways to, you know, express yourself, like outside of the education route and things like that. And so I completely agree with you. I just that reminds me of what you were saying as well about Joelle Taylor. Her line, is it broken men breaking things, or something, is it?
Men are broken, things break.
Things, very
and kind of like we were saying earlier on, Becky, as well, about how we look for mirrors of ourselves, don't we, in art, films, books, friends. We're looking for people that mirror our experience. And I think one thing I really wanted to do when I wrote that book, like, it was so important to me at the time to write it in dialect, you know, and I don't know if my second one will be, but it was so important to do it that way, like, for that reason, do you know what I mean? So that suddenly that voice belongs. Now it belongs in poetry, it's acceptable, and it's such a compliment to me when I see other people writing, like in Yorkshire dialect and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And like it's giving permission to do it, isn't it? You know, and I'd seen other people, I'd seen Irving Welsh do it, for example. I'd seen other people writing dialects, but I'd not seen anything in my dialect, in my specific little small town West Yorkshire dialect, you know.
Yeah, completely. There's just another question. I don't know if you've seen that in the chat there just while we're on dialect, Toria. Did you get comments that you shouldn't write in dialect to appeal to more people?
Yeah, I did get a few comments like that. And after a gig, actually, one time, this woman came over and asked me if I did any other accents, and I think she thought I were doing like a show, like an impression. An impression of a girl from West Yorkshire, and I was like, no, look, like this is literally just my voice. But yeah, somebody made a comment once about how there should be like an appendix explaining what certain words mean, and I just think that I come across words all the time and I don't know what they mean, and I just Google them.
Yeah, I know.
No, and that's okay. And if we're expected to learn words that we, you know, if I'm expected to dissect an academic essay and Google those words, then I don't see why somebody can't dissect a book written in dialect and take the effort to you know, to figure out what those words mean. So yeah, like mixed comments, but generally like really positive, I think. And I think for most people, what they've said is that when it helps them when they read it, because they can hear it the way it's intended to be.
Definitely. It's just got so much soul. I think when you can really hear it in somebody's voice, it's like it feels very real. Yeah, I love it. I think it's really effective. Just got another question sent to me in the chat then, which is what was the best venue or event you performed at? So what's been your favorite event? You've had that many, Toria, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I have got a standout memory though. We did the Philharmonic in Liverpool, and it was just huge for starters, like just so big and grand and full, you know. So that felt like a big deal. But also, like, I just love Liverpool anyway. I just think like the crowd in Liverpool always just is so like encouraging and friendly, and it felt really special that night. I feel like me, Johnny Clark and Mike, we all performed really well that night. You know, like there's lots of little things that sometimes don't quite go to plan, and sometimes there might be a little bit of stress backstage, or sometimes we might bump heads. Or that night just felt totally perfect. Like everything felt great about that night. So it's probably my favourite gig that I've ever done.
Brilliant. The Phil's boss as well. It's so like old school and beautiful as well. You can't not have a dramatic entrance. I was just got a message in the chat there. Do you have any rituals before or after getting on stage? That's a really good question.
Yeah, so like I think the important thing when you're on tour and everything feels a bit weird and you're kind of like away from home and everything, I think it becomes really important to sort of do things at certain times just to like give you that sense of safety. And also this, like for me, I carry around so much anxiety before the show that like those little rituals keep me safe. So, and it is just tiny little things, and it's just things like, you know, 5 o'clock I'll straighten my hair, or I'll have like one glass of wine before I go on stage, or you know, like Mike always, an ode to St Anthony is my walk on music, so that's always played at the same time, like, you know, 5 minutes before I go out. And yeah, just daft little things like that. Top up my eyeliner 15 minutes before, and you kind of get in sync with it, you know. And you learn each other's funny little things as well, so I know when to give Mike space, and we know when to talk to Johnny and when not to talk to Johnny. And it's what you hope for is that it's going to be exactly the same every night, like that things work out well. And you know, it's a small thing like something not being where you think it's going to be, as like dramatic as that sounds, can really put the cat amongst the pigeons, because suddenly you feel like it's going to have a domino effect on everything, you know. The high intense situation, really.
It is, it can really affect you and throw you off, can't it? And it's nerve-wracking enough being being on stage, let alone without without possible things going wrong, or like the mood not being quite right beforehand, or because you put so much of yourself into your performance as well, because it's not only is it like a performance and it's physically draining, but it's so personal and so like emotionally draining as well, like yeah, doing that every night, that level of yeah, you've got to safeguard yourself, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And really, like, I'm not very rock and roll. Do you know what I mean? I like to have a couple of drinks after, but what I love is just to be back in the hotel bed with the telly on. Do you know what I mean? And like, you know what I mean? Yes, another night done type thing. It's like I can't personally like just be getting wrecked every night. Do you know what I mean? It just would have such a terrible effect on your performance, and actually that's really unfair on your audience. Like, I wouldn't dream of doing that to people who've paid money. So
Yeah.
no, it's all about being sensible.
Oh, yeah, it's all in moderation and stuff. That you
Yeah.
have that routine and that like self-care, I suppose. Because while it's wonderful having this lovely writing therapy, emotional kind of offloading, yeah, you need to really be gentle with yourself as well. I've just got I think there's time for one more question. So Nancy's just put, oh, lovely question. What is your favourite poem to perform, Toria? So really question.
It's funny, but like I like performing the sad ones. I really like performing Note Matters Now. I think it's a really old one, and I can feel people like gasp sometimes. Like, I feel like you get a real sense, like with your audience, you get a sense that they're with you and that they're connected. And it's an incredibly sad poem, but also for me, like, I feel like, one, it's important to share that story, and two, I like to talk because it's got my friend in there. I like to share him with people, and also like I think we all carry sadness, Becky, don't we? And sometimes like we sometimes people don't like to talk about things like that. And when somebody else does for you, I think it can be a release and a relief. So often people will have a little cry to that poem, and I quite like that.
That's, on that note, I love to make my audience cry.
Yeah. There's no greater compliment.
Somebody's just asked for the title there of that particular poem. Is it Now It Matters Now? Is that it?
Yeah, No Matters Now.
Up that in the chat there as well. Now, yeah, it's a really, really beautiful poem. Really beautiful. I think I love I said this to you before, I love that one about the My First Kiss one. That's really lovely. It's just so like teenage and fun, and yeah, I think there's this really cool quality to your work, Toria, where you've just got this amazing balance of like this youthful kind of like energy that just like springboards everything, and then these like incredibly poignant moments. So I'm really, really excited to hear your creative response piece at the end of the residency, and to see what your workshops and everything are like. On that note, this is time. So thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. It's been such a wonderful, just a treat to chat to you. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, and thank you very much to our audience for all tuning in tonight. Thank you to our WOW team who've been operating behind the scenes as well. Much appreciated. Just before we go, I just wanted to make you aware of some events that are coming up this week. We've got a workshop tomorrow night, and I believe we've still got some spaces left on our one-to-ones as well. So if you would like the opportunity to either come to a workshop, a Bloc social, our enterprise hub, which is all about taking your writing from the page to the stage, or if you would like some one-to-one time with Toria to discuss your work and get some feedback, please do get in touch. We're on info@writingonthewall.org.uk. Have a look at the website where you can get through to the Eventbrite links, or just pop us a message on social media. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a lovely rest of your night. Take care.